everybody. Welcome to the Half Geek, Half Human podcast, where we explore the intersections between technology, business, and life. Half Geek, Half Human is powered by our company Atiba, an IT consulting and software development firm based in Nashville. I'm Anna Kate Ross, and I'm a project manager here at Atiba, and I'm joined by my co-host today, Joey Baggett, Director of Business Development. Joey, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're going to hear on the show today?
Yeah, so this whole show was about turning data into dollars. And at first, it's kind of like, what is that going to be about? But what was really cool, so our guest, Michael Rosen, really awesome guy, really funny. You guys are going to enjoy his story. But what was really cool about it is how he took publicly available information that anybody can access if you know the right places to go and look. He took all of that and turned it into a way to make a lot of money. And to me, that's really cool to take something that's not even like that proprietary. And now I know he's got a secret sauce behind the scenes with the algorithms that he's worked on, but it's just really cool. He's like, yeah, I knew the data was there and I knew how to make money on it. And here he is, many years later, coming from his first profession, which was an attorney, into doing that. So it was really cool. And he was a really easy person to just talk to, and one of those types of guys that you could probably sit and have a cup of coffee with and talk for an hour about his stories. So that was just my perspective. So what do you think, Anna Kate?
Yeah, I really enjoyed our chat with Michael also. As you said, he started out as an attorney, trial lawyer, and from there fell into a couple of different jobs that led him to starting to ProviderTrust. And not only was it neat to hear kind of about his life's trajectory, he's a really compelling storyteller. And I loved the way that, he would give us the background on something. Well, first I did this, and actually what led me to this were these other three things. And it was just a really entertaining discussion, in addition to being informative. So it was a really fun conversation with Michael, and we're looking forward to you guys hearing it.
Yeah. And what was funny about it is there were times that we had to give them like a behind the scenes cue to like, hey, we need to move on to the next question, because he gets so into his stories and it's just really funny to hear it. But he said to just rein him in whenever we needed to. But I thought that was really cool. And yeah, like Anna Kate said, you guys are really going to enjoy this episode, which is turning data into dollars with Michael Rosen from ProviderTrust. So sit back and enjoy, and then enjoy the podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Half Geek, Half Human podcast. The topic of our show today is turning data into revenue, and we are joined by Michael Rosen. He is the co-founder of ProviderTrust, which is a company that has simplified the storage, management, and ongoing monitoring of credential information. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell us, in your own words, about ProviderTrust. What does your company do, or how do you describe to other people what ProviderTrust does?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, let me disclaim I am JJ's cousin, his favorite cousin at that. One he's learned most, if not all, of his business acumen from. I couldn't be more proud of him and what Atiba's been able to build and the team that he has assembled. In all honesty, it's pretty darn impressive. And I remember when JJ had left Vanderbilt or graduated Vanderbilt and wanted to do something on his own. And he's such a creative person and yet technical. And he had this idea, and I thought, what's this going to be? That's so needed. And to watch it grow and the iterations and the acquisitions and things you've done, it's truly remarkable. And so kudos to the Atiba team. And it's also fun to be able to see your cousin every other Sunday, I guess it is, in the Tennessean, in the tech corner. So it's quite impressive for someone that none of us thought would ever amount to much. Anyway, I jokingly say, JJ, congratulations on all of this. So I'm Michael Rosen. I'm JJ's oldest cousin from Nashville. We grew up across the street from each other. Our dads are brothers. They could not be more opposite in personality and talent and just people, but it makes it fun. We lived at 338 Jocelyn Hollow Circle. They lived at 333, and we got each other's mail, and it was kind of always fun to try to tell people who's really the uncle and who was the other uncle. But anyway, so after college, I went to law school thinking I could change the world. That lasted 5 years, hated it. and was a litigator. It really wasn't my personality, but I really liked actually advising clients and the compliance side of things. And so if you let me go back just briefly in time, I did practice law for the state, for the Attorney General's office, represented the Department of Corrections, which I never thought I would be involved in or use later in my life. But it actually was fortuitous. We handled all the inmate litigation when they sued for civil rights violations to determine if they were real cases and deserving of some ramification against the state or a false claim. And so that was my litigation history. Did that and a little private practice for about 5 years, and really decided it was not. I'm not really an argumentative kind of person. I'm more of a mediator type person, and I like advising people, not getting into fights with other people. So I ended up meeting an entrepreneur here in town, Mike Schmerling, and in the early 90s, he had just started a private prison management company. So I guess it sort of was fortuitous, and I joined him as in-house counsel, and we built and managed private prisons. Not something necessarily I thought I'd be doing in my life. It was actually quite interesting and rewarding work. That business was purchased by Corrections Corporation, now CoreCivic, here in Nashville a few years later. And Mike and I decided we liked working together. We wanted to start a background screening company. So in 1995, before some of you on this call were born, we started a background screening company and grew it to a national and ultimately international business. It was acquired by a company called Kroll Inc. out of New York, and there's still an office here in Nashville. But we did background screening for about 15 years, and in that business, healthcare was one of our strongest sectors, kind of the largest. It was a business really focused on helping regulated markets take publicly available data and figure out a way to make it more efficient and usable in an electronic format. And if you have to go back to the time that we started this business in 1995, something called the internet was just born, like literally coming out. And people were realizing that it had commercial value, but they really weren't sure what to do with it. And we saw it as an opportunity to build an intranet to where we could have people all over the world ultimately working on a background check, and that background check could follow the sun. So the way that business was set up prior to 1995, you had generally sheriffs that were not reelected or people that came out of law enforcement that would do paper background checks, and they would go to the courthouse and chase that person's history courthouse by courthouse and build a paper file, and it would take 10 days and you would get back a credit report and et cetera, et cetera. We said that's not efficient, and a lot of these data sources they're public record, they're online, and we should build a system that using the intranet can go out and pull that data, and multiple people can work on different pieces of the file all at the same time and get the background check done in 3 days or less. That was revolutionary because it was otherwise a manila folder handed by person to person doing different things. And so it was kind of fun. It was a wild frontier. There were very few companies that are the few that remain today that have gobbled up all the smaller companies. And so we really, and I talked to JJ about it quite a bit, actually, like, this is public record information, and there's just not efficiencies the way that you would hire a sheriff or try to go to the FBI and get a fingerprint check. This is what we're going to try to do. So we grew that business and ultimately merged it and took it global. So when I left, there were about 1,000 employees in our division of the public company, and we were searching a couple million people a year, healthcare being our largest sector. That was in 2009. If you think back in 2008, there was a kind of a market recession and setback, and nobody was hiring. My largest client was Royal Bank of Scotland. They were doing $3 million a year with our company. And they called the next day and said, we have a hiring freeze. We're not hiring anyone for the rest of the year. And that led into 2009. So when you have to pivot a business that's based on volume, it makes you really appreciate technology, but also think differently about its vulnerabilities. And so catching up to how ProviderTrust was formed, after 15 years in the pre-employment business, it was time to try something new. And I wanted to own something again, not be a division of a Fortune 50 company, which we were. And so it dawned on me that when I had a chance to look back on what was missing from that industry, we talk about monetizing data being the theme here. We were one of the top 3 background screening company providers and had marquee clients, you name it, hospital system, nursing home. We were fortunate enough to work for them, along with Southwest Airlines, the TSA. So it was a global company, but nobody was monitoring that employee once they hired them. And in 2009, you were beginning to see the Affordable Care Act come in, and only geek lawyers like myself really read down in the detail. And there was a provision way back on several hundred pages into it that I caught the eye of and said, the law is changing, and not just the Affordable Care Act ramifications for getting insurance, but there's actually a requirement now that people do this on a monthly basis, monitor their healthcare professionals in order to get federal funding, Medicare, Medicaid, CHIPS, TRICARE. The government smartly said you have to be licensed and you have to prove that that person's licensed on a monthly basis, and they can't be what we call excluded. And I can explain that in a minute. But these were best practices and things that you might have checked at hire, but you never checked again in my previous world. And so I thought I need to get ahead of this curve and try to build some software that focuses on ongoing monitoring, not a point in time that is stale the day that they're hired. And so that was the genesis of ProviderTrust. And so that would have been in 2010.
Just to kind of go back into the past for a second, because we all like to live in the past. You talked about how you had to chase that paperwork from place to place to place to place. So I guess at what point, where did getting that data into your intranet, because I imagine that was kind of the spark that separated you from everybody else and you kind of set you above. So I guess how did that work from a technology standpoint? How did you go from very manila folder to bringing stuff into a more of electronic way?
Yeah, it's a great question. And by the way, I wish I had your DJ voice, Joey. Now, so the idea was to use to use technology at that point, the internet, so that it became a digital folder, if you will. Right? Today, we're used to that. Everybody has a digital HR file. Everything's digital. But in 1995, that just didn't exist. And so literally, we bought a few companies right out of the bat that literally we bought their business. And by the way, these were a company in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, that was doing Gaylord Opryland, Corrections Corporation, who had just bought my previous business, and American General Life Insurance. I mean, this was a 13-person company that was doing Fortune 100 company work. And so we realized it is very disparate. And physically, literally, when we bought the business, we inherited 50 file cabinets of paper background checks. And so it was pretty evident to us that we were onto something if we could automate it. I think one of the things that's interesting about both the background screening business that I had and now the ongoing monitoring, we're searching publicly available public record. This is not data that's proprietary, and it is accessible to anyone and by anyone. So there's not a big barrier to entry in this market. And I'm not encouraging anyone to come out and try to compete with us, but in all honesty, this is based on the premise that if you do technology well and you are both good at thinking through where the data exists, how to get it into a format or reformat it in a format that's searchable across an entire database, and what are those key parameters that are unique to Anna Kate or Lee or Joey? Well, it's your name, it's your date of birth, it's your social security number, it's certain publicly identifiable information. Sounds really simple. And then you realize Anna Kate might have been Anna Kate Smith, and then she got married and became Anna Kate Johnson. And Anna Kate could be one word together, the way she spells it, or it could be two words, or it could be a hyphenated. And if you're not searching any and all of those variations, you could miss what is a publicly available record. So what seems really simple is actually complex when you peel back the layers of the onion. And so if you don't think critically when you're taking what seems to be basic data, you're going to miss what is right there in front of you. And I think two things differentiated both of the background screening businesses that I've been involved in forming, and we believed in it from day one. We contractually indemnify our clients, and we provide air and emissions insurance of $10 million if we make a mistake. You otherwise shouldn't pay me. Because if I don't search Anna Kate correctly, or I don't look and see that she was Smith and now Johnson, and all that's publicly available, that hospital system's going to get sued or have to pay a fine, or there's a malpractice case in which they're going to lose. For me to turn around and say, I am so sorry, I won't charge you 50 cents for that search today, means nothing to my client.
Right.
And they're not buying anything of value. And so I think if you're someone listening to this and thinking, how could I build a business that's sustainable and has value? And, you need to think, what is the one thing that if you're really good at, that you can guarantee? Because if not, it's just an item that is not really worth what you're paying for. And a lot of our competition has sprung up where they don't guarantee it, they don't search various ways, and they miss things. And so we end up losing on the front end on price sometimes, because they'll go with the cheaper, less technology-oriented firm. They'll get burned, and they'll end up coming back because of the fines they pay. So that's kind of one of the basic tenets, I think, when you're thinking about how to monetize data, how to do so.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask then, how, I'm sure, or I would assume your process evolved over the last 10 years. How this speaks a bit to, your secret sauce. So I don't want you to give away any proprietary information, of course, but how have your algorithms changed, or how have you adapted to make sure that you're culling all that data and looking for all those exceptions? It's like a really interesting data story there, I would imagine.
Thanks. That's a great question. And it's a fair one. And I won't give you the secret sauce, but I will say this. It's a combination of technology and human eyes that have to do this right. So what we're really, I think, very good at intentionally, and that's why we do offer our indemnification and back it up with errors and emissions insurance of $10 million coverage if we make a mistake. We are very intentional about making sure where the data sources, what we call primary source data, has to come from the primary source. In this case, that's the state of Tennessee licensing board for nursing, or the state of Texas chiropractic board, or whatever that person's license is, in addition to many other services I can describe in a minute that we would search. You need to know, A, where to go. You need to know, B, when that data is updated, because they don't proactively post that they're updating their data. And we have built logs and algorithms and do testing to say, did Texas update today? We do screen scraping. We do a bunch of different types of technology that go out and say, we know that the federal OIG list of exclusions, which is the big one you need to search, updates anywhere from the 10th to the 15th every month. So my crawlers are looking from the 9th through the 16th. And when they see that, boom, it was updated on the 11th, we know we're current for that month, because that's a once a month update. Now, the data that comes in is disparate and not simple to search. It doesn't always come in rows and formats the way it should. And so you have to now download that data and then scrub it. And so we're proficient in knowing where we need to scrub to get it into our searchable format. At the same time, we're searching to see that, look at this. It used to be last name, first name, middle name. Wow, they changed it. Now it's first name, middle name, last name. If you don't know to search those columns, how they come in, and you're just looking at it like, oh, it's another update, you're going to be searching the wrong last name as a first name because they switched their field. So you have to really study all aspects of the data file. That's the easy part. The hard part is that most data sets do not release the identifiers that are really necessary to make an algorithm that doesn't require human intervention. So what do I mean? The only thing that separates Anna Kate from someone else is her name, date of birth, and social. It's really your social security number if the data set contains it. Now, of course, no data set that contains it releases the social security number. You have to know it and enter it, and they'll tell you if it matches. They won't release everyone's social security numbers because that's identity theft. So you have to know it. You have to know where to get it. And if there is a name match, then enter in the social security number. We have built bots that go out and do that, right? And say, that's a match, that's a no match. If there's anything in between, like there could be a match, but it's Anna Kate separated, or it's Ann Kate, or it's something close but different, but it's still similar because they both lived in Davidson County, that goes into a special queue, and human verifiers go out and do additional work. We're able to automate about 92% of what comes in as long as the data source has identifiers. And so without getting further into how we do it or the secret sauces, those are things that you have to get and stay proficient. I think what people fail to do is stay current and study the data. And so they make mistakes because they assume it's always going to be the same. When it's government data, it's always changing and it's never the same. So these are some of the things that we have an entire data processing team. We have engineers that go out and do this. You have CAPTCHA. State licensing boards don't want people to just download the data for selling them or marketing to them, so they create CAPTCHA. How do you build something that automates getting around CAPTCHA? And that CAPTCHA changes. Picture, is it a name? Is it a symbol, right? And so we have entire teams that are constantly studying that in order to bring that data in. And I think the other thing I would add, if you don't mind, a little long-winded here, but I would say, I think you have to decide, and I think JJ would agree, on the projects that you take on at Atiba. I think you have, as an entrepreneur, you have to decide, am I going to be the low-cost provider and try to get volume, or am I going to be a premium product, which I would say we are, and I'm going to sell value with accuracy, not just words, but I'm going to back that up. And so that is something, if you're deciding to get into the data world business, I think you need to know from day one, because I've got 115 people in this company. I've got competitors who compete that have 3 and they work in their house. They don't have the data scrubbing teams. They don't have the insurance that we have and the technology that we built. And that's intentional for them. And so they charge pennies for what they do. They're also not developing and innovating. And large customers are going to realize that and say, I can't bet my company revenue today. I think it's important to understand the other driving factor for us, and this has been true for both of my background screening companies. We play in a regulated market. Okay, this isn't. We should probably do a background check and probably make sure Dr. Rosen is a surgeon today. He has to be a surgeon today, and he has to have a DEA license, and he cannot be excluded where he can't bill Medicare or Medicaid, and he can't opt out of Medicaid or Medicare and then take a Medicare patient. Like, these are things that are they're just basics, right? And if on a daily basis you're not checking that, you're putting your firm at risk for paying fines or having to pay back. Those are considered false claims. And each one of those has $10,000 to $15,000 penalties per day times 3 treble damages for submitting a false claim. So we are a regulated, tailwind-driven business that defers and and defers for the client, absorbs the risk and the fees if we're wrong. And that will make you really work hard at being proficient all the time, because I can't afford to be wrong.
Right. And I was going to ask too, being in a regulated industry, I mean, that's a good business opportunity for you, because your clients are required to do these screenings. And is that what led you to healthcare? Because it's so regulated by so many different bodies, there's so many people working in healthcare, it seems like there would be a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, it really is. When I looked at the different, and we were obviously in the background business doing financial services, education, transportation, healthcare, all the regulated businesses. But at the end of the day, almost all of those, with the exception of healthcare, had one federal statute and one thing to search. That's not hard to solve. If you have the resources and you're a bank, you can go search OFAC pretty easily, right? That's pretty much what you have to search. Now you have to make sure they're not a felon in a thief and a bank robber and working as a teller. But other than that, that's really all you have to do. In healthcare, there's a litany of things they have to have that are current, and they can't have a certain background to be doing their job. And so the beauty, if you will, is finding an industry like healthcare that is heavily regulated at both the federal and the state level. You're talking about federal tax dollars that are dispersed through Medicare federal, where there's one data set, the OIG list, that you have to check. And everybody knows that. But of course, it doesn't have all the identifiers to make the matches. So that's where you can be better. And then there are 42 of 50 states that have a state Medicaid exclusion list on top of it. You could be excluded at the state, at the federal, one, both, neither. And it matters when you're trying to provide services. So there are over 50 data sets to search on each individual each month in healthcare, which makes this regulated business so technology prone.
That's and that the healthcare side of it. So, at Atiba, we do work with a lot of industries that are heavily regulated, a lot of compliance needs, HIPAA, PCI, and Department of Defense too. And so it's just, there's all these types of compliance needs out there. And so I'm curious from your side of things. Because I know that there's a lot of onus that kind of goes on your clients as far as reporting to the government and things. But on your side now, is ProviderTrust specifically regulated by the government based on the information you're going out there and getting, the data you're getting and you're providing to people? Does the government come knocking on your door saying, hey, we need to watch over you to make sure that you're doing this the right way?
No. However, in order to win the business of any of the publicly traded healthcare companies that we work for, or the large systems and payer clients like the Blue Crosses of the world, you obviously have to be high trust certified, you have to be NCQA certified, or you're not going to earn that business. If you SOC accredited, certified, there's certain things you have to be able to show that you are doing and built in your infrastructure to protect both the PHI, which we do not hold. We have no protected health information. We don't have medical diagnoses, x-rays, any health record, and we're not searching anything on patients. We are PII centric, personally identifiable information. We are searching the employees and vendors of the hospital. And so the mission of ProviderTrust really from day one has been to provide a safer healthcare with better data. And how do we do that, right? So when we first started the business, we thought, oh, well, the market is all of the doctors and the nurses and the therapists and the technicians, right? That the employees. And so Vanderbilt, who's a client, they've got 20,000 employees, but they have more than 20,000 vendors and suppliers, which we didn't really think about and discover until we really started understanding the ecosystem within healthcare. And that's where the real liability is, because we have, having done this now for almost 13 years, we monitor over 7 million vendors and people. We've really been able to study. And what's interesting is There's the 80-20% rule, right? Several of our large customers are community rural-based hospital systems, as well as urban. And in the community-based hospital system, healthcare is local. 80% of their suppliers are in small town southern Alabama. Now, they have national contracts, right, with Pfizer to get medicine and Johnson & Johnson to get MRI machines. That's easy. Those companies are regulated, they're public, they're not excluded, they're properly licensed. You don't have to worry about ownership. But if 80% of the vendors that you deal with are community, that's not saying they're bad people. It's very easy for fraud to occur, and fraudsters know that. And we've seen everything from organized crime set up shops in small towns to even an owner who is himself excluded, meaning he has been convicted of a felony or misdemeanor for patient abuse, substance abuse, or fraud and abuse somewhere in the system. And as a result, that state agency, Medicaid agency, or the federal government has excluded them. They put them on a list. They've given them notice and opportunity for due process. And they said, based on this conviction or the loss of your license for abusing drugs or fraud billing that you did, whatever the case is, and wherever it originated, state licensing board or elsewhere, you are now on a list for anywhere from 5 years to indefinite, where you cannot be in whole or in part reimbursed with federal healthcare dollars. So what does that mean? You can't own a business, even if you're just the manager. You can't own an MRI business in rural, southern, pick the state. Form a corporation, have your wife own it, but you work there and your salary is paid for with Medicare dollars. That's why you're excluded. You can't do that. That's exactly what people do. They say, well, my wife owns it. I'm not listed. It's in the name of MRI Inc. They're never going to know that it's me. And they're out there fraudulently billing and collecting kickbacks to get patients referred to their business. All the things you read in the paper, all these frauds schemes that you read about, like how did that happen? How did the neurologist get all these sleep cases referred to him? Well, he paid somebody $50 to get referrals of patients from a nursing home and either never provided the service, provided worthless services, or illegally got a referral and made a payment. But they're never going to find me because I'm not the face of record. Well, that's the level of detail that a company like ours has to uncover so that Vanderbilt isn't doing business unknowingly with or knowingly with a fraudster. And it sounds like that wouldn't happen often, but it unfortunately does happen. And it happens more often than not in the rural communities. And that's what's sad. There's a Johns Hopkins study I'm happy to send you that you can send as a follow-up if you'd like, that was done. Dr. Marty McCary is, you've seen him on CNN. He was big in the COVID tracking. He did some studies through Johns Hopkins, and they found that the bad actors are more often than not hiding in smaller rural towns because they can, and because they're hoping the system isn't sophisticated enough to do a really good search, and they're committing their fraud to the underprivileged, the underserved, and in most cases, the minority sectors. And it's really sad. I say all that. We are not selling fear, and I want you to know that 97% of the time, you're in good hands with a provider and a supplier and a system that works. But if you don't know who those 3 to 5% are, that's really where people can get hurt. And that's why we exist, to try to help avoid that.
Yeah. And I have a question that sort of is a good segue from there about trust. I mean, you obviously have the word trust in your company name, ProviderTrust. But how, and I asked this also, JJ, our founder, JJ Rosen, has also spoken. He talks a lot about trust. He's written in his Tennessean column about the importance of building trust and how you do that just for, business transactions, for gaining clients, for all of that. But in addition to, having a really great product that you insure and get, more or less guarantee your clients you're going to be able to produce a good result, well, how else have you gained trust among your clients with your business?
I love this question. Thank you. I'll tell you a funny story. When we started the company, I should have known this as a lawyer. I was insistent with my business partner that we use the word trust, and he really liked provider, or we have a product called Passport, and we were trying to figure out how to combine things. And we both agreed trust has to be the core of what we're doing as well as our values, and I want to address that in a minute. So when we formed the company, it was formed as ProviderTrust. Well, what I didn't realize is that when you use the word trust, the state of Tennessee, any state, but the state of Tennessee, Secretary of State won't let you use the term until they've determined you're not a bank and trust. If you use the word trust, you have to not, if you are a bank, you have to go by certain regulations, but you have to prove that you're not a bank. And that took 6 months. So we actually were first called Provider Host because they wouldn't accept the term trust until we could prove that we're a healthcare technology company, not a bank and trust. So we changed our name from Provider Host to ProviderTrust when the state realized we were not a bank. So a little tidbit there. But trust is in the name for a reason, right? If you shouldn't pay me, and you have to trust what we're doing, that we're going to the right sources, accurately reporting and providing timely notice to you, or really what I'm selling you isn't of value to you. And so it was purposeful, but that's client facing. And we have never changed the name, never intend to change the name, because we believe that it sticks, it matters, and it is the core principle. But on a value system internally with our employees, we trust our staff implicitly, but not blindly. We're pretty geeky. I love your half geek, half human tagline. It takes a little longer to get hired here because one bad apple can really upset the apple cart here quickly, and not just from a liability standpoint, but from a culture standpoint. And so we have a couple of values that I think tie into trust. And I think our clients, we work really hard for our clients to understand that we're not just a company behind a record and a software system, that we're a real culture here, and it matters. So one of my favorites is be the hustle you desire. That's one of our values. And it's not the hustle I desire, it's the hustle you desire. But if we don't have the same hustle, and we're not trying to provide safer data to make the healthcare system safer, we aren't both working for the same hustle. And the hustle that we maybe do, it may be busy work, but it's not driving the company rocks and goals and ultimately providing a safer data set for healthcare providers. And so, like, for me, that's where trust comes in. The other thing, we do a talent assessment on all of our applicants to whom we're seriously considering making an offer. When I was in the background business, I didn't myself believe it. I didn't believe in them. I thought, how do you come up with psychological questions that determine if the person is going to steal paper clips or, be a good employee? I mean, I just didn't get it. I'm going to tell you, there are good companies that are proficient at what they ask and how they ask to determine. There's really two things we're looking for when it comes to trust. One is integrity. If you don't have integrity, if you're not always going to do the right thing, even when you mess up or something you realize you should have done differently, and you're not open about it to solve it as well as to resolve it if we need to with the client, I don't want you here on our team, because that's not what we stand for. And so the integrity piece is something you cannot teach somebody. You either have it or you don't. It's not a teachable, we believe it's not a teachable skill. So integrity and the hustle are important. I can teach you what an exclusion is and how to upload a data set and build a bot to screen scrape. That stuff, you don't have to know healthcare to be good at what you do. In fact, of our 115 employees, there's only 2, myself and our compliance officer, that really get excited about healthcare compliance. right? We're a software company, healthcare technology company that happens to be solving healthcare compliance issues. That just happens to be the business that we're in, right? And so everyone here is rowing in the same direction and willing to either admit their mistake or say that I tried something and before it went live, it didn't work. Let's not turn that code on, because we're all wanting to make healthcare safer. And I think that is what ties why people stay and are here. And when you see and you read these stories of the poor care provided to the poor that we see, it's just heart-wrenching. And you think equity in healthcare is unfortunately not a given. I could give you one story that really we use all the time internally. We have an employee who adopted a child. And the child was of a different race than the parents. And at a reputable hospital, I won't say where, a nurse pulled them aside and said, you might want to know about the drug addicted problem of this parent that is birthing this child you're going to adopt and the health issues that come with it. That's just not okay. That is inequity within healthcare, and it's just wrong. And that should never have happened. And they were grossly inflamed by the fact that somebody would think that would change someone's mind when they were there to adopt a child, regardless of whatever race, disease, issue, whatever may come of in their lifetime. And you realize that's happening all over the place. If you magnify that with someone who's willing to commit fraud on top of it, it's just not okay. And so that's what drives us, is making it fair and equal to everyone.
You know, you talked a lot about integrity at the start of what you were just saying, and then you really ended with a really strong take on integrity. And you talked a lot in between there about your company, your culture, your 115 people, that you really do a intense screening process, it sounds like, to make sure you hire the right person. But you've also won a lot of awards on such a great place to work. So, I'd imagine that you're doing something right from the top down. I know from working for your cousin, JJ, that he's a great guy to work for. And I'm sure that you're in a very similar position. But tell me about how you've set up this culture at your company to where people want to work there. They want to work for you. They want to learn. Like what? It's a common question in the world today. I even ask it in interviews, like when I was interviewing to work for Atiba, like, what's the culture like? It's so important. And so I guess how have you driven that culture there?
By the way, you would love our culture better than JJ. But I, jokingly aside, we do talk about it, actually, JJ and I, quite a bit. And I think we've shared some ideas back and forth with each other. I know he's active in the EO organization, and that's some things where he's been exposed to other, growing, fast-paced companies. So Chris Redditch is my business partner. We put our two business ideas together in 2010 and started ProviderTrust. We did it because I'm 15 years older than him. We're of different generations, and we have different skill sets, and it works perfectly because we both believe in the same thing. And we said from day one that we're going to make this a people-centric business first. It just happens to be a healthcare technology company that's dealing with compliance, but it's people-centric. And it's one thing to say that, it's another to really live it out. So we have 10% of the company allocated in ownership for stock options for the employees. I want them to be rewarded when this company, ultimately is bought or sold or whatever down the road. They deserve it as much as anyone, and are the reason really equally that it took off. We had a pipe dream that we could build this company, but it takes the other 113 people really to get it to work every day, and so we don't forget that. We have a really strong people ops leader, we call, and her name is Jody Murphy, and she's fabulous. And when Jody came to us as a person we were considering, I really wasn't quite sure. She didn't come from an HR background. She was a women's field hockey coach for Liberty University and took a unknown program in a not in a growing sport, evolving sport, and took it to national championship multiple years in a row. And I realized right then and there that that's everything you need in a person to grow a company, especially with a company with young talent like we have. She had to deal with rock star athletes that came from all over the country who were self-absorbed and the best at what they did and all the accolades, and then had to join other girls just like them who were equally as good and talented and work together toward a common goal to actually win a game. And at the same time, they had to show up and go to school, and they had to make good choices and couldn't drink too much at night, and they had to be careful with the boys, all the things that's like managing employees at a company, especially young employees. I say that in jest. It really is a fascinating background that she has that has really allowed her to relate with her peers, as well as provide camaraderie and competitiveness. Everyone here is competitive. I will say that. Most of the people have played some form of sports. Chris, my business partner, played both collegiate soccer at Richmond and then semi-pro, and he's actually one of the minority owners of the MLS team here, the Nashville Soccer Club. And so sports and competitiveness and winning, but winning in fairness and doing it right is sort of what's imbued everywhere. We do, probably not unlike a lot of companies after COVID, but we were doing it before. We're here in the Capitol View, a few blocks across the interstate from you guys. I see your building right now. And we have a office space that's shaped like an L, and 20% of our space is the corner, which is 2-story glass, and it's a cafeteria, and it seats 85 people. And we have lunch there a couple of days a week. We meet every morning and have since day one. Every morning we meet from 8:50 to 9 o'clock as a company. We did it when we had 3 people. We do it when we have 115. And on Monday, religiously, on Monday, in advance, a different employee is selected weeks in advance, and they get to pick one of the 6 values or business practices. They get to read it, recite why they've chosen it, pose a question, and to the whole team. We then go through quickly what's happening this week, events, whatever the agenda for the week, and then we break 9 o'clock. Tuesday, everybody meets with their, I hate to use the word department, but their area of focus. If you're in engineering or sales, marketing, you meet with your team and you discuss that value in your team and what it means, what you learn from it, and the one thing you're going to get done that day. Every Tuesday. Every Wednesday, we all circle back. For those who live remote or who are traveling, they dial in. We drop a big screen in the cafeteria so everyone can see, and people report back what they learned in their groups. So think that value was shared in the discussions from other groups. It's fascinating. On Thursday, a different department reports. Here's what we're doing. Here's some statistics you might want to know about what's happening over here on the data side, et cetera. And on Friday, which is my favorite day, a different employee than the one selected on Monday in advance gets 20 minutes to talk about whatever they want. Whatever floats their boat, whatever moves them, what they're good at, a skill they've learned, their dog, travels. I've learned how to make specialty coffee. I've learned who walked the Appalachian Trail. I've seen, we had somebody do one on black hair, the history of black hair. We've had, it's unbelievable. One guy set up his duck blind in our place and showed how to shoot ducks. You will learn more about your colleagues on that Friday, and it is the most fun time. And so we do that, and we've done that for now 12 and a half years every week. So it's consistency about speaking about what matters. Why do we do the values every week and let the employees pick it? Our colleagues, our team members, because reinforces why it's important, but gets a different perspective, their perspective about what it means. And I think those are some of the ways we're busy in the community doing, angel tree events and second harvest things. And these are not compulsory. Everyone shows because it's the right thing to do. And that's just what we enjoy working together.
That's awesome. I feel like we could do a follow-up show just on culture and kind of things learned over time, how you've evolved and changed. But just to close us out, just one last question. What's next for Provider Trust?
So we've decided that we now have the employees, the vendors, and the payer market. So think also, rather than just monitoring on a monthly basis, ongoing, to make sure the person's license is good or they're not excluded, what if you could do it prior to the payment being made? So they're not, right now it's a pay and chase model. So whether you're Cigna, United, Blue Cross, whomever, if you get a bill in and it's from a gastroenterologist and it looks like a service that gastro would do, there's not a lot on every file. They're periodically auditing some files. Is that reasonable? Was that person sick? Whatever. But pretty much they're saying, that sounds reasonable. We're going to pay the guy $2,500 today. And then they go back and they have teams of people, 30, 40 investigators who say, let's just audit and see if that should have been paid. Come to find out that doctor was not licensed that day. Well, you've already made the payments. Like, if you could stop that payment from being made because you're checking real time through an API, it's opening up our back end gateway through API technology to where before that doctor is scheduled or that claim is paid, not after it's paid and now go pay and chase it. That's the evolution of where we are today. And we're only going to get better through the API technology. And I think that's where you'll see ourselves grow. If we're lucky, I might monitor. My father, JJ's uncle, is a retired gastroenterologist. If I was lucky, I'd monitor him through his practice, for his practice. He had privileges when he practiced at Centennial and Baptist and Vanderbilt. Hopefully all three of those are clients of mine. And in an ideal world, and I would be monitoring my father also for them. And then if he accepted Blue Cross, Cigna, United payments today, or TRICARE for the military, they were clients. So I could search the same person 8 or 9 times in a future world with Provider Trust, or a current and future world. And that's really where we're building out our footprint in the marketplace, as well as the technology to get it done.
It sounds like it would be really revolutionary. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We really enjoyed the conversation and learning more about your business and hearing your take on JJ, as the cousin across the street. That was pretty fun too. So thanks so much, Michael. We really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure.
You've been listening to Half Geek, Half Human.